Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. I am so excited to be here today with my friend and psychic medium, Lee Morgan. And in our previous episodes together, if you weren't able to catch those yet, we talked about our spirit guides, the different role that spirits have in our lives, how communicating with the deceased can help us navigate grief, reconnect with our intuition, and how the clairsenses can help enhance your life. But today, we'll be talking more about metaphysical experiences, or said another way, experiences outside of what our human senses perceive as reality. Yes, I'm talking about seeing, hearing, or speaking with those who have come and gone before us and are now deceased. Have you ever had a deceased loved one come to you in a dream? Well, today we're going to be talking about how to distinguish between regular dreams versus visitation dreams. Who is more prone to having these experiences versus those who aren't? What dream weaving is, how you can start asking spirits for signs, and so much more. First, let me introduce Lee quickly to those listeners who are new here. Lee Morgan is a psychic medium offering mediumship and intuitive guidance readings. After careers in advertising and interior design, Lee couldn't shake the pull to fully open up to and understand her intuitive gifts. She also hopes to help normalize the perception of psychic work by sharing her own journey openly through workshops, interviews, and information provided on her website. Lee, it is so great to have you back here. Thank you for joining me again.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. Me too. I'm glad to have you back. And especially for today's topic, metaphysical experiences. I think so many of us think that can't happen to me, or it's really rare to experience something like that. But in chatting with you, it sounds like it's probably more common than we even realize, maybe because of stigmas or just discomfort in talking about these things that feel so far out. But I think you bring a lot of wisdom and experience to this topic in particular. And I think everyone will really enjoy hearing your thoughts today about how maybe likely and often these types of encounters can happen to people who don't expect it.
Thank you. I'm so glad to talk about this. I feel like before I started this work, I might not have realized how common it is. But because I'm in this role now, and I assume people see me as a safe person to share with, so many people will tell me their experiences. And what's wild about it that kind of led me to recognize how scary it can be to share these experiences is even when they tell them to me, they'll preface it with, "You'll probably think this is crazy, but," and I'll always laugh and say, "You're talking to a medium. Like, what are the odds that I'm going to think it's crazy?" Right? So yeah, I feel like with the things people have told me now, people in my everyday life, along with clients, so many of them have shared with me that they've had at least one experience that I would say it's feeling like 75% of people have had an experience like this.
Wow.
Which is a pretty high number. Now, they'll vary in intensity. Sometimes it's only one, and it will obviously be somewhat determined by who you've lost and when you lost them. Right? Like if you're really young and you haven't really lost anybody, it might not happen yet, but as we age and as we lose people that are really close to us, it seems to kind of increase in frequency, but that makes sense, right?
I think so. Perfectly sensible to me.
Yeah. I know they always want to help. This is important to kind of cover how the messages are, because we all have imaginations, right? We all can hear in our mind how someone spoke that we loved, right?
Yeah.
But a really easy way to differentiate between our imagination and the real deal, as far as like hearing something in your mind, is spirit will always be positive. They will always be loving. They will always be well. They will always be in service, right? They always want to help us. So if I'm remembering my dad, for example, and I hear something in my head like, don't do it that way. I told you, that's me. That's me remembering something from childhood where I was doing something some way my dad didn't want me to. That's not how he would come speak to me today.
Got it.
Right? So it can be a little tricky, but that's a real basic understanding. But yeah, it happens all the time. And especially, I think, as we start to lose parents and unfortunately, when people lose spouses, those people, you can imagine, really want to reassure us, right? That they're fine, that they're with us. So yeah, I think it happens a lot.
I love thinking that that is possible and even happening day to day. And that's what we're going to get into today. I want to hear more about the stories that you have to share and some of the things you've seen and heard in your experience talking with people who feel crazy sharing these encounters with you. I think to start, and just to give everyone a quick refresher for any new listeners that might be joining us today, so that everyone has kind of a foundational understanding of your work, Lee, can you quickly explain what psychic mediumship is and how you discovered your abilities?
Sure. Well, I can quickly explain what it is. It's the practice of communicating with the deceased. That's what psychic mediumship is. Now, how I discovered my abilities really took a lifetime to figure out what it was. I realize now in retrospect, I was always getting extra information, but the way I processed it, or I guess the way my body and mind processed it, just felt like overstimulation and anxiety and confusion. But then as I don't even know. I guess circumstances took me to the right people in the right places. And I shared my experiences with the right people, right? And then they were able to say, oh, no, this is what that is. That is what that is. This is what that means, It's like going down a path that you are not familiar with and then meeting someone who's been down a similar path, which I think is why I think these interviews we're doing is so important. Because even if one person who has had an experience or feels like they're getting messages can hear me talk, maybe they'll feel better about what they've experienced, right?
Yes,
that's the whole
absolutely.
Point. I was mentioning to you before we started recording, a lot of why we all have such difficulty in life is we feel so apart from, right? We feel so different and separate. And that's not conscious, but the more we realize we are the same, that we share the same experiences, at least with some people, the more we're able to focus on our own strengths and our best selves and the lives that were meant for us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'm a big believer in the concept of we are all one, we came from the same source, and we are just truly spirits having a human experience here on Earth, not the other way around.
And sharing so many similar things.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for that, Lee. I think that's a really good quick overview just to ground our conversation today. So everyone's starting from the same place. Today, we're going to talk more about metaphysical experiences, which I'm really excited to dive into. How would you define or explain a metaphysical experience to listeners who may not be familiar with what we're referring to?
Yeah. So it's an experience where you see or hear or feel or suddenly know something that we wouldn't consider in the 3D world. People often associate it with seeing or hearing, right? Like I saw someone in the house, or I heard someone in the house and there was no one here but me. The one they don't think about as much is feeling. I've actually had an experience with feeling, and then I had a client recently who did too. And it's really odd because it happens. And I mean feeling like, not feeling like emotion. I mean like feeling like an object move.
Oh.
Or feeling like something. Both of these ones I'm going to tell you happened on a bed. So it's like feeling like a bed depress. When look your eyes, it already looks like, woo, this is not Ghost Hunters. This is not, I promise you.
Lee, I love our conversations together.
Yeah, this is not Ghost Hunters. It's not scary. But just feeling something happen in the room that there's no visual paired with, right?
Yes.
So, yeah. So I don't know if I think that answers your question. It's just an experience that's outside our normal 3D world.
Makes sense to me. I comprehend. And yeah, that example was really terrifying, but
it won't be when I tell you the whole thing. So, okay.
All right. I'm really excited. We're going to get there, guys, so that I don't get scared. That's really helpful. Thanks for sharing that definition, Lee. I certainly think that is a very clear understanding of what we are referring to when we say metaphysical experience. I'm curious, how does sharing these experiences help people connect with themselves or get more curious about themselves on a deeper level? Just again, bringing it back to a lot of the approaches on this show specifically and our mission in empowering women to get more curious about how they're feeling.
Okay. So our power for being our truest selves, and that can sometimes involve healing, right, is rooted in feeling comfortable with who we are, who we actually are. And we don't realize it, but all the ways that we deny our truths, including not sharing something because it might sound crazy, in quotes, is minimizing our truth. Now, I'm not by any means saying somebody needs to get on a podcast or a radio station and tell everyone in the world a very private or personal matter. But I am saying that I have seen in practice, in life, that when people who are close or people who are trusted share with each other things that they don't understand, and this includes metaphysical experiences, but it can include so many other experiences, that the bond grows stronger, the self-esteem grows stronger between the two people, the trust grows stronger, and the two people then feel more rooted or secure in their truth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does.
And then feel anything that does that. I mean, walking a mile can do that, but anything that does that only leads you more to the truth. And you quickly realize that it's not such an odd experience, right? If everybody told everybody when this was happening, you and I wouldn't even be having this conversation because it would be so normal.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like secreted away in a little place and they find somebody like me and tell me. Well, I'm so glad they told me. But what if they told somebody else? And then what if that person felt like they could share? It's like dominoes, right? Once one person shares, and this can be about anything, a traumatic experience, a metaphysical experience, something you really want to do in the world, but you think it might get judged. I don't know what that is. Maybe because it doesn't make a lot of money or because it's an odd career according to how you grew up. Anytime you can get the courage to share your truth, we're just closer to what we're going for. And in this particular instance with metaphysical experiences, it would, if everyone would share, it would send along the lines the reassurance that Spirit's always here to help us and that we're not on our own. And that alone would take it down a notch, right?
Yeah.
But everything, listen, obviously I was born in the States. I live in the States. It's a great place. I love it. And every characteristic can be taken too far. And I believe what's been taken too far in our culture is this rugged individualism. We've taken it so far as to cripple ourselves a little bit. Now, I want everyone to have an opinion and have the right to express their opinion and have all those rights. But as far as actually taking it into your life so literally that you're an isolated island, even if that's just with your thoughts and feelings, that handicaps us.
I totally agree. And I think you've touched on a lot of the themes that we talk about in other episodes on this show too. Mm-hmm. You need to feel safe to heal. And if people can create that safe space for you, that connectedness that you can find with another human being can be so powerful in encouraging you to look at your life from a different vantage point. Or to your point, Lee, go out and live that dream or that truth that you maybe have been stifling or suffocating for so long to be what you think you need to be for everyone else around you. And this is where that work to be brave and get curious about yourself and to find the right people to confide in or to support you along that journey can be so helpful and so powerful. So I'm really glad you're touching on that through the lens of metaphysical experiences and how, of course, I love how you open with yes, if I were going to tell someone I saw a ghost, the first thing I would say is, you're going to think I'm crazy, but
so you ask ourselves, why do we do that? Why have we been conditioned to feel the need to minimize or qualify our statement to be accepted or loved? I mean, right there is a root of like almost all issues. Why?
Fair.
Why do I have to temper what I'm going to say to make sure that you accept me? That goes to a much bigger question. But, it's also really relative to our audience, because if you're in our audience and you're listening to all these, you're probably like me. You're someone who struggled, who had challenges, who might have trauma, who has anxiety or depression, who maybe has a physical ailment or a chronic condition. These types of situations for the living are when the deceased are so active. I'm not trying to help a child when it's happily playing, eating a snack on the ground. I'm trying to help a child when it's about to fall down the stairs, or when it's crying, or when it's so spirit thinks of us that way. They're going to show up even more when we're in these states, right? So it's very pertinent to the audience.
I love that. And it really reinforces what we talked about in our first episode of like, you truly are not alone, not only with like the network of people in your orbit or your community, but from a spirit standpoint, you always have that helping hand, that guidance. There's always the universe, God, whatever you believe in. It's all happening for you. It's not happening to you, which is a big theme. That's great, Lee. Yeah. Thank you for sharing your perspective on that. Why do you think people often feel hesitant to share their experiences of hearing or seeing a deceased loved one?
So many of my answers generally go back to cultural conditioning. I'd say maybe since the industrial age. This kind of goes into small history lesson.
I'm like, I didn't expect you to go there, but let's do it.
Our culture has begun to focus more on the left brain, the very logical, scientifically based, theory checked, factual, provable area of information, which is a super valuable area of information. Right. I'm an and person, and both, not a or,
I think anyone on this show is an and person, so I can appreciate that.
That is very, very, very valuable information. However, it has done so at the expense of intuitive, unexplainable feeling information. Right?
Yeah.
When really we're all better off if we have all of it. So because of that, and because, there aren't really any people alive before that time, we now live in a culture of a bunch of people who were taught just by repetition and mirroring how to be taken seriously, how to be liked, how to be valued in our culture. And it did not include telling a bunch of people weird stuff that you can't explain. I'll tell you one of the bed stories with this answer, and maybe this will help, and it'll also get everybody to stop worrying about who got in the bed. So I have a client who unfortunately is now a widow. She lost her husband, and she and I were talking. And so in my work, it's always important that the information from spirit come through me before the client tells me the confirmation of that experience, right? Because the whole point is that I get the information without them telling me. So I said, so your husband's here, and he says he does this thing that he thinks you've noticed. And I think I might have even said, but you don't tell anybody. And we were on a video chat, and she kind of looked at me, and I said, okay, so you're still sleeping on your side of the bed. Like, he's showing me this in a visual. You're still sleeping on your side of the bed, and you're doing it on purpose because you don't want to go on his side, and you wish he was there, and you're really having a lot of private grief at night, which is absolutely great. That's her private space. And you're wishing that he would be in there, and you have a couple of times felt as if not as grand as if somebody really got in the bed, but kind of a little slight depression, like someone got in the bed beside you. And you immediately thought, oh, he's here with me. And then your mind took over and said, oh, but that can't be true. And she was just like open mouthed. And she was like, yes, that has happened twice. Twice I have felt like And it wasn't scary, right? Because she's thinking about her husband. Any feelings she got, we've talked about how people do have energetic signatures. You can feel who's who. You can definitely feel something threatening and something loving, the difference, I promise. So she was in this loving feeling of grief, and she was thinking of her husband, and she felt this almost like somebody kind of pushing on the bed, and she realized, oh my gosh, she's here with me. And it happened to her twice, but she had kind of been like, oh, I can never tell anybody that. Now, I understand exactly. I mean, in effect, she only told me because her husband told me first. Right? And that happens a lot. Spirit will tell, let me tell you this thing. And it's probably because they want the person to feel safe, but just imagine, we'll just take this one category of widows. Okay. Just imagine how reassured and hopeful and maybe even calming it could feel to all widows if they heard this story. Now, luckily for us, widows do tend to group up, and there are widows. And I'm saying that because they do tend to share information with each other that the general public won't. So they're actually,
I think that's right,
more likely to
people who have, been through something like that. I think people who have been through a devastating or tragic loss like that do find others in that state of grief or experience. And to your earlier point, connect so that they can help each other through that. And I have a friend also who is widowed, and I know she has a group of widowers that she gets together with, and has told me on occasion that it has been life-changing for her. So I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Any group of people who have had similar experiences are priceless to one another, because everyone else in your life who loves you and is well-meaning cannot understand it as well as those individuals. So they don't want to tell. I mean, this is a long way of saying they don't want to tell because they think they're going to sound crazy. They think they're going to be less than. They think they're going to seem less intelligent. They think, this is all underlying. It's subconscious. They're not consciously thinking that. But something has been programmed in us to say, if you say, hey, I walked in the kitchen today and I think my grandmother was standing there, that people will think you're crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know why. I mean, who's to say she was or she wasn't? We don't know. But we've something about our world has taken away our freedom to just tell the truth about something without fear of being judged.
I totally agree with that. And I think that's a really astute observation. I have to ask, just given the examples that you shared, in your experience, what are some common ways that people perceive their deceased loved ones, i.e. feeling, seeing, or hearing? Yeah.
And I should add, emotional feelings or thoughts also kind of come into play, and I'll explain that. So I have had, feeling like someone's touching the bed. The bed gets really involved. I think it's also because of what we talked about before. In that time after wake or that time before sleep, our brains are in a slightly different brainwave. So we're more receptive, or more perceptive in that arena. But I've had several people, I mean, probably more than 10, say that they have either been awoken at night or woken up to see someone loving standing at the end of their bed. It's someone they know, right? So it's like a grandparent or a father or a mother, and they will actually see it out. And these are people who do not identify as psychics or mediums. They just are people in the world living their life, and they will wake up and see the form of this person standing at the end of their bed. And let me be clear, it's usually not like 3D like me. I've seen it once, and the way I saw it, mine was in color. So it's like regular color, but almost a little bit see-through. So if I were here, but you could kind of see through me, but see me enough to know exactly what I was wearing, or if I had this necklace on or whatever. So it's just a little transparent, but that's pretty vivid. And people will see differently, but that's pretty common. So it's not like a fully formed human.
Okay.
But it's almost like, if you projected an image of somebody against a wall, it's kind of like that, but a little more 3D than that.
Yes. That's a great analogy. I love that.
Yeah. So they'll say that they will, sometimes people do hear people. So this is hearing. You can hear people walk down the hall. Now, I want to be clear. This happens a lot with animals. It's not and I say that because we all know if you just heard shoes walking down a hall, that's much scarier than hearing paws. Little paws. Because it will be relevant, right? It won't just happen randomly in your life. It'll be like if your dog has just died, or you've just had to put your dog down as the humane treatment for a situation, so many people will hear the dog walking down the hall.
Wow.
Right? And can you imagine how lovely that is? So when emotions come in, so I've done seeing, hearing, feeling, the bed. Emotions can come in most of the time when they send signs. So spirit loves to send signs, right?
And I love to see signs. I am big on synchronicities.
And I consider these metaphysical experiences too, because here's the truth. And I'll say this, and people, if they've had one, they'll probably be able to relate. Right when you see something that's a sign, you will immediately know, you will know who it's from. And I don't know how to explain it. It'll just be in your head. And then within like 5 to 10 seconds, your brain will talk you into something else. So in other words, a lot of people find heart-shaped things. So like heart-shaped leaves or heart-shaped stones or heart-shaped pebbles on the beach, or they'll just walk by on their walk, a telephone pole they walk by every day, and suddenly there's hearts all stapled to it, like out of construction paper, like really weird, random stuff. That's just not. And the minute they see it, like, I see heart-shaped stuff and I immediately think of my dad, which is so curious because my dad and I did not have the greatest relationship. But somehow when I see it, I'm like, Dad, now what the information, have we talked about this before about intuition? Is the first piece of information your brain gets, and then your rational mind will talk you out of it within 11
Not within
seconds.
as specific as 11 seconds, but we have talked about intuition.
Okay. So I had this client who teaches intuitive workshops, and she gave me that information, which I thought was fascinating, which is thoughts will pop into your head uncreated by you. Actually, I think they're placed there by spirit, right? So I would see this heart, and immediately my head would think, Dad. And then my brain wants to go, that doesn't feel like Dad at all. Why would Dad of all things, like, I don't know, he'd send something, but that, like, I will talk myself out of it, which most people do. I've learned not to. But the first thought before 11 seconds have passed, like the first thought is the true messenger of who sent you that thing. So we all know about birds. Birds are super common. Cardinals even more so. And it's interesting. I think people are very, very opinionated about cardinals. Half of the world thinks like, of course, that is the best sign ever. And the other half of the world thinks, oh, that's so pedantic and normal. And of course, you're going to say cardinals, when not every spirit sends cardinals. But the reason they do, I always explain, I was like, it's not like God got together and said, it's the most blessed bird. I mean, all birds are blessed. But it's
I mean, there was definitely a religious lean there for some.
But the main reason is because it's red, and nothing in nature is red. And if you're trying to get the attention of someone who can't see you and someone who's not looking for you, you will try to use red, right? Like, it's like, hello. Like if it was green, would you ever see it? Brown. So a lot of that is them being smart. I mean, that's why blue, anything that's odd, more likely to get your attention, they'll do. I have clients whose relatives send praying mantis. Oh yeah. I mean, they'll get creative because that's not something you see every day.
For what it's worth, if my spirit guides are listening, please don't send me a praying.
You don't like them?
No, they freak me out.
They know you. Did you have a bad
fair.
experience with a praying mantis?
Do you remember, was it that movie, Look Who's Talking, where like the praying mantis eats its mate? And they actually show a video of that. It just, from when I was a little girl, it just really is now emblazoned in my memory, and they freak me out.
And these are like signs you can see, right? Like animals. They'll also send signs like messing with electricity, which happens a lot. And I feel like I could talk about this forever. Spirits have preferences. So just like a lot of things we talk about, there will be a variety of reasons why they pick something. It will either be important to you, or it will be important to them, or it will be an aptitude they have, or it will be something there's a lot of around you. So it's like convenient. Like, there's some people who live with a lot of deer who come in their backyard. So their spirit relatives will be like, oh, deer, they're there all the time. We'll just get one to come closer to the house. So it's using what's there. And so some spirits, not all spirits can do the same thing. So some are really good with messing with electricity. They'll blow out light bulbs. They'll turn lights on and off and on. They'll turn the TV off and on. And I find that my clients especially will always know who it is. They won't question for a minute who it is. They'll be like, I know this is who it is. It's just like them, right? It's like a personality. Like your grandmother may be more likely to send you a cardinal like this, right? Your dad might love a hawk. Like it's really protective. But your brother might be like, I'm turning the lights off and on because I think it's hilarious. So it's kind of a lot of spirits send songs, right? So like, and I'm talking unlikely, like you'll be listening to a country station and hear a Bob Dylan song. Like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't make sense. Or you'll walk into the grocery store and the song will be on, or a store, or you'll play your iTunes randomly and this song will come up and you won't even know it was on you didn't even know you had it,
Cool.
So, I don't even remember what the question was anymore.
I don't either, but this is all very helpful, cool stuff.
Yeah.
No, I really love all of that. I think it's so helpful to bring it to life in terms of what people can look out for and how they might recognize they're having an encounter with a spirit. And I think to know that it could come in any of those forms is very helpful.
Yeah. And by the way, when it's like a bird, I always tell people, as mediums, or I'll speak for myself, I am very left-brained. I'm realistic. It is not every cardinal in the world, right? There are many cardinals that are not in cahoots with spirit. But it's the ones that like stand on the outside of your windowsill or tap on the glass or land on your car when you're in there. Like it's unusual. Like even you in your regular human life would say like, this is an unusual encounter.
Well, I'll tell you, no, I think that's really helpful. And I'll tell you, cardinals this last year have played a major role for me in reinforcing that I'm in the right place at the right time is how I read that synchronicity.
Like
and signposts. Exactly. And one night I was just having a particularly difficult day and I hadn't been outside all day because I was just busy doing work. And I stepped out of my house to go get the mail at the bottom of the driveway. And the way our driveway is, it's curved at the top. So you kind of go around these rocks on the left and then it's a straightaway toward the mailbox. And I was going out for a walk to get some fresh air. And I kind of looked up at the sky and I said, universe, this has been a particularly trying day. I would love to know that I'm heading in the right direction. And it would be very cool if I saw a cardinal right now. And I think I maybe even said it out loud. I turned the corner of our driveway and there is a cardinal standing in the middle of my driveway looking at me like it had been waiting for me. And I was like, noted. Thanks for that. Moving along. I mean, it was almost eerie, but it was so comforting at the same time. And I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget that.
Bring up such a good point that I want people to know. You can request signs. I mean, that's important. This is probably for a topic for another interview, but people always assume that spirit communication is one way. Like we're just receivers. And that's not accurate. It's a two-way street. They love it when we talk back. They love it when we ask for stuff. They love it when we ask for help. So it's not just a receiving position. But yeah, I love that you did that. I love that you asked for a sign and you got one.
Well, I also think it's very affirming to hear that it is a two-way street and that people can ask for that kind of help. I think that's so comforting. And it's so important because I don't know that people think about that.
They don't. I mean, I even have people in my mentorship program who are speaking to spirit who still treat it like it's just a one-way communication. And I'm always opening their eyes, which is so beautiful when they realize it's like, you could ask questions. You can ask things back. You don't just have to get what's delivered. You can say, well, what about this? Yeah. And that's
very cool.
Also probably another one. But so I can share with you this is interesting. The interesting standout in all these experiences that everyone shares is dream visitation.
I believe that. And actually, I'm curious now that you bring that up. Can you explain what a visitation dream is and how that differs from a regular dream?
So the first is always the qualifier of what we went over at the beginning. Are they well? Are they positive? Are you getting a good vibe from it? Is the first kind of check mark. We all are going to dream about our deceased loved ones. That's how our bodies work out what's going on, right? We're not all going to get visitations. And a visitation is specifically, now I do not understand in reality how it works, but I'm going to tell you how I understand it. How I understand it is that in a sleep state, our brain waves are in such a formation and our guard is down, meaning our logical brain is like not minding the what's real, what's not fence, right? And our loved ones who are gifted in this area, and we'll come back to that, are able to, in soul form, communicate with our soul. Because we do have a soul in here. Even if our body needs to sleep, our soul can be awake. The soul needs no rest, right? The body does, this human form. So our soul, our loved one, we can use my dad as an example, even though I've never had a dream visitation from him. And he could come and my mind would record it like a dream. Like all of a sudden I'd be like, I see dad. And usually they're standing very still. Usually they look really, really, really healthy, maybe even younger than they were when they died. And usually, if not always, they communicate telepathically with the dreamer. So it's not, their mouths don't really move, but you will automatically understand what they're saying is things like, I'm here, I love you, I'm fine, you're fine. And it's almost like a moment, the way it's described to me is like a moment stopped in time. Does that make sense? And sometimes they'll say things like, I'll come again, or I can't come again. And we're not going to get into why they're busy. You know, it's not about us. I'll tell you right now, it is absolutely not about our value or how much they love us or anything like that. But sometimes they'll give like a parting instruction, right? Or kind of update on where they'll be or not be. And then they'll go and you'll probably go back into dreaming and then you'll wake up. Well, the next day, we all know what it's like to dream. And you know, when you first wake up, I mean, this happens to me all the time. I first wake up and I'll be like, that dream was crazy. I'm going to write it down. And by the time I have gone to pour water in the coffee maker, I can't even recall the doggone thing. I'll be like, it was something about a ball and a gorilla. Like I'll have like weird points that I remember, but I won't remember it like I did 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
It just, it's like trying to grab air.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, that's a great description.
And that's fine. That's normal. That's dreaming. That's whatever. I mean, I know better. I could keep a pad right by my bed and just wake up and start writing. But the difference is a visitation, it will feel like it just happened 1 second ago and your recollection of it never fades. And it is accompanied by real emotions that are impossible to manufacture.
Wow.
So it will be a real emotion of love or peace or calm or hope or glee or even grief, even like not horrible grief, but like you will literally 20 years could go by and you will remember it like it happened 1 second ago. It's obviously a very different experience.
That's a very helpful distinction between a typical dream and what a real visitation dream looks like, because I am sure all of us have had the experience of waking up and knowing exactly what we dreamed about. But then to your point, grasping at air, it just kind of dissipates within the first few minutes of waking.
It's so crazy. And then by noon, I'll be like, I don't even remember the topic anymore. I don't know. But let me be clear. If you have a dream, and I can't tell you how often I hear this from clients, and it makes me so sad because it's not real. Let's say your dad died, and in his life, the most important thing to him was this car that he had fixed up. And he was like, all I care about is that we always have this car. And then somehow after his death, the family doesn't have the car anymore, right? But then they have some dream where their dad says, I told you not to sell that car, and is like really upset about the car. That is not your loved one. That is your mind trying to work out your issue about not having the car because you truly believe that your dad's wellness is attached to you having that car, which is not true. Deceased people don't need any material possessions. They only care about material possessions if they provide shelter, happiness, love, or money for their living relative. That's it. They don't care about it, which is hard to explain. But when we get there, I promise you won't care about it. I mean, unless it provides those things for your living relatives.
I think that's a good clarification, though. And I think I understand what you're saying is that the intention of the spirit visiting you in that dream is pure. It is for good, for you to be safe,
yes,
for you to be happy, for you to be healthy.
Reassurance.
Your spirit is not going to come and yell at you because you gave away something that they really loved in their lifetime. So that's sort of the distinction.
No, never.
Or judge you about anything.
Or judge you
I think
about
that's
anything.
a really good way to think about it.
So I think because we're sleeping, I guess, maybe because dreams are, bonkers anyway, everyone feels like, oh, I'm going to tell everybody that I had this dream, a dream. They can call it a dream or a visitation. oddly, they don't seem to hesitate to call it a visitation when they share it with friends and family. Now, interestingly, this actually, I feel like, causes maybe more problems than it solves. And that's because, one, it seems to be the only one we believe. So like, especially within families, like if I lost my dad and I got a dream visitation, but my sisters didn't and my mom didn't, you can imagine how that goes down.
I don't have to imagine in my house. No, I can see how everyone would be like, well, wait a sec.
And then, of course, because humans are, I don't even know why they are the way they are, everyone immediately thinks, oh, it's me. Like, I'm not good enough. I'm not loved enough. I did something wrong, which is never has anything to do with it. So the first thing to know is that both sides of this communication have to possess an aptitude for this to go down, because there's this false assumption that this experience is available to everyone, right? That would be as silly as assuming everybody could sing like Whitney Houston. Like, it's just not going to happen, right? So the aptitude on the human side is that their body, their energy body must be receptive to meeting while they're sleeping. And I will tell you, different bodies. Have you ever met people? This is a good example. Like, some people love to hug you or be hugged, and some people don't want to be touched.
Absolutely.
That is fair. Everyone is allowed to feel exactly how they want to feel about that. Well, believe it or not, our energy bodies in sleep have that kind of almost like force field as well. So there's different strengths of force fields around different people that we don't have the controls to. They're just kind of like part of who you are, that will allow or not allow a spirit to kind of meet with you in that way, right? So that has nothing to do with anything other than something we can't control. And then the secondary aptitude is on the spirit side. So this is just a word I've heard it called. They probably call it a lot of things. It's actually called dream weaving. So from a spirit side, they call it dream weaving. Like, I'll visit my loved one by dream weaving, which means this skill set of being able to reach out to your soul when you're in sleep state and request a meeting. But it's, from what they explained to me, it's not something just everybody automatically knows how to do. Like, you have to kind of figure it out. I think of it kind of like some people are well versed or have a high aptitude to be able to put you in a meditative state with a guided meditation, and some people don't. Now, neither of those people are better than the other people. It's just literally a skill set they either were born with or they learned or they worked on, right? Have you ever done a guided meditation? You know how some people, you're just like, it's just so...
Yeah, absolutely. I have.
Are able to do it. And then there are other people who just couldn't do that, right? I mean, they may be able to learn, but it would take a minute. And spirit does learn stuff while they're there. So some of them are working on it. They'll tell me sometimes, like, I'm working on it. But so what I do love dream visitations, but I don't love that it makes people feel bad if they haven't had one, and that it's falsely assumed to be like across the board. If you get, you can get one. So if you don't get one, something bad is going on. And sometimes they think something bad is going on is my deceased person's not okay, and that's bad too.
Agreed. No, I think it's great that you're debunking some of these myths and expectations, just given the nature of what we're talking about. And it's so helpful for people to know what to look out for and what not to stress about. I mean, it's really a roadmap for tapping into your intuition and allowing these connections if you are chosen to do so.
Exactly. I love to tell people, I do this for a living. I talk to the deceased for a living, which means I'm doing it all day, 4 days a week. I have never had a dream visitation. So hopefully that makes people feel better.
I feel better. I mean, thanks for sharing that.
I'll add to that too. When spirit sends us signs or visits us, will be directly related to whether or not the timing will lift or lower us in our experience. So I'm a human, which means I'm very familiar with wanting something that's not necessarily good for me.
Aren't we all?
And so I'd like for us all to be able to admit that.
Yeah.
And even especially in grief, right? Mm-hmm. Like, if I've lost someone that I miss desperately and I want to talk to, I'm like that girl in Willy Wonka, who wants the chicken that lays the eggs. I'm like, I want to hear from them now. I'm aware of that when I'm doing it, but I also know enough to know now is exactly when they're not going to come, because I am in too much of a fragile space, too much of a needy space, that this visitation will actually sink me lower into either grief or depression or helplessness or despair. And they will wait until I'm not saying I have to feel great to get a visitation. It's more about stability. Am I in a place where I'm more able to receive it without going, am I in a place where I'm able to receive it and go, oh, wow. Wow. That doesn't mean I feel great. That just means I'm not in a nosedive.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, and that, believe it or not, that is loving behavior from them.
I believe that.
Yeah. So that too has a really big effect on when and how we get messages. I always use this example of kindergarten, because most people have had a kindergartner, that when you take your child to kindergarten, it's just a bad day. They don't want you to leave. You know what I mean? But they haven't been going long enough. They haven't been living long enough or going to daycare long enough to have any kind of concept of mom will always come back. Right? But you're a grown up. You know you're always going to come back. You're always going to come back.
Yeah.
But we forget what they don't know just because they haven't lived long enough. And that's like us in this scenario, right? Well, we don't know. So let's say you take your child in and they are crying, and you hug on them and you hand them to the teacher who you love, and it's all safe and loving, and you go back out and you hear them yelling for you, and you don't go back in. You know why? You know they're safe. You know you're coming back. You know it's only like 4 hours. You know that if you go back in, that just takes that whole situation like this down.
Totally.
So you don't go back in out of love, because they're almost finished crying and the whole thing's just going to ramp it up again.
Yeah. Any mother that has been in that situation can understand that analogy.
And you're not upset. Like we always say, well, why aren't they upset that I'm so upset? Well, that 4-year-old's probably thinking the same thing, or that 5-year-old. We know all the things they don't know. Like, I'm never leaving this child. I'm always coming back. They are totally safe. I've vetted these people. I know they love their friends. And that's how our deceased people know about us. They know, that we have all these outlets and resources and that we're safe, and we still want what we want, right?
Absolutely.
But they're being loving is kind of my point. It's a loving action.
Yes, it is. I think that's a really good way to bring it to life for listeners too. So thank you for offering that. Lee, what final message or advice would you like to leave our listeners with regarding metaphysical experiences and visitations from deceased loved ones?
I would love for everybody to do, even if you feel like you can't share it with another human, is have faith that your experiences are real, even if you can't explain them, right? Because I want everyone to have the comfort of knowing their soul's looking out for them and caring about them. Then the second step would be if there's a close relative or a close friend you feel safe sharing with, give it a try, because I think the world would be a better place if we all shared it and we'd all feel just more grounded, oddly, in a kind of an ungrounded topic.
Yeah, but that's a human truth, right? You go to any sort of support group or mom coffee talks. I've gone to a couple of these locally. And when people are vulnerable and come clean about things that they're struggling with, that they don't believe others are, you always have someone raise their hand and say, yes, I'm going through the exact same thing. So,
it's like, me too.
Yes, I think that's a
me too.
Dark but true reality.
Mm-hmm. So look what that did. So it's the same. And then, the whole point of this is not because we need to focus on deceased people. Like with all of my work, the whole point on this is that we can have the most solid, supported foundation while we're human to be the best version of ourselves we can. Right?
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
I love that.
And this is just one little aspect of life that could happen that I would love for you to allow to be part of that package.
I am ready and willing, Lee. I'm fully open to it after today's conversation. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with listeners. I learned a lot, and I'm sure everyone else did too. So thank you for being here.
You are welcome, and thank you for having me.
I can't wait till we do this again.
Me either.
And to those listening, if you all found today's discussion helpful, please share it with friends and don't forget to subscribe. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to get resources, meet the heroes, and share your ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.